And hello, finally welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to day 2 here of the PEL Contenders. My name is Maxman, once again back with the big boy Imperium here on my left.
Yep.
We are ready now for second day of epic PUBG action. Yesterday was absolutely awesome. Teams getting a little bit ready, getting a little bit heated up.
Of course,
Today,
of course,
is coming back to it.
Yeah, warming up, of course. We had 4 games yesterday. Fantastic start to the PEL Phase 3 Contenders. We're going to have 32 games in total, 4 down, 28 to go, of course. We did experience the one and only Sanhok for the very first time yesterday in PUBG competitive, which is, in my opinion, I absolutely loved it. I know, once again, as I say, players are very divided.
We saw the Twitch chat,
and actually, the Twitch chat seemed to be very divided on if Sanhok is good or bad for competitive. You know, in my opinion, I loved it, but then again, I'm a caster. I like to bring hype. I like to see excitement on the screen, and that's what Sanhok brought us.
Exactly. It was really interesting to see what happened there in that first Sanhok game.
Yep.
Once again, trying to get used to it, try and see a little bit where you're comfortable to play, where you like to drop, etc., etc. But anyways, what the people are looking for, Imperium, the overall standings after day 1, even though it's not set in stone like that. It's only day 1 after 4 games, so that's completely fine. But Tornado Energy up with a pretty decent lead here, 4 points up against second position of Milky Way, so 39 points. Pretty decent. Very good average per game.
Definitely very good average per game. But what is interesting is that 4 out of the top 5 teams all got chicken dinners yesterday. The team that has not got a chicken dinner is Quick Math, lying in 3rd place. And what is extra interesting about them, Max, is that they actually only have 6 placement points, but with a chunky 23 kill point for yesterday, that was, obviously, as we've seen, it's put them up in 3rd place. So if they can maybe increase the placement point finish and match the kill points, honestly, I can see them really kind of picking up on a good lead against the teams behind them.
The reason why they came out with so many kill points was just the Miramar game. It was so good for them to come back in the standings.
Exactly, and it kind of echoes what we talked about when the fact that they picked up Jupzig and Diggory for this Phase 3. 2 individual players that stood out, in my opinion, in Phase 2 of Contender. So you match up with their current roster, it speaks for itself. Of course, when you look at the bottom place teams, DOS Pilots, Last Crew, Rewap, you know, they of course will want to look to pick up the pace and pick up in terms of kill points from that point of view, and of course get them closer to the top 8.
So a few teams, unfortunately, they're going to have a little bit more struggle, but we're going to go over now, once again, the rules of the PEL. If you're new to the broadcast, you do not know how this works out. First position up to 10 points, all goes trickling down to 8th position to 1 point, then 0, you get the big bubble once again. And why kills are so important? Because you get that 1 kill equal 1 point rule coming into action, and that's why the team like Quick Math are dominating like in the leaderboard.
Exactly, like even typical example is like Tornado Energy, for example, in the last game in Sanhok. They got 8 kill points, and I think they finished in something like 12th place, and they got 0 placement points.
Bad, yeah.
But they got 8 points for kills alone. That's the equivalent of 2nd place plus 2 kill points. So that's how much of a difference kill points matter in the standings. Even when you look over the average points per game, the kill points is a lot higher average per game than the placement points. So these teams, they will want to frag out. They want to be individually talented. As I said, Quick Math seems to be doing the right job from that point of view.
Yeah, Quick Math have got to try and keep it up. But here it is, the schedule for the day. Myself and one of the 4 matches for you guys at home. So we're going to start off the day with Erangel, as always. Nobody's going to be complaining about that one.
Nope.
Then follow up with 2 Miramar games, and end the day once again with Sanhok. Going to be really fun to see that. But 2 Miramar games, I think that's going to be also really interesting. I think that's where we saw the team like kind of develop the most yesterday, where you saw the more rotations and more interesting plays. So 2 Miramar games coming today. Rotations are going to be dominating day 2 of Phase 3.
And in fairness, that's also kind of what I like about this phase compared to the previous phase is that They in the previous phase you'd have the same map for the whole day, and that's not a bad thing. But I like just the change up in map on each day, just to kind of have a bit of variation throughout those 4 games, and it just means that kind of like, I wouldn't say the viewers are getting bored, but it just means that we can talk just a little bit more about the next map that's going to be played within the day. And of course, with the addition of Sanhok, it adds another variable.
Next step would be to add Vikendi. You don't know when that's going to happen. I would love to see the snowy map.
So would I. Lots to talk about that map, and actually some people do seem to feel that if you're talking about adding a new map, Vikendi was kind of more ready than Sanhok.
Compared to Sanhok, yeah.
You know, but either way, Sanhok is involved. It's exciting to see, and hey, look, we'll see what can happen. But you know, we got to ask, like, who's your team to kind of look out for today, Max?
Damn, that's the question I was going to ask you.
I know.
You stole my question.
I know.
Okay, I think that I talked about that earlier. I think my favorite team is YMCA.
Yeah.
I think they're a team that plays very on the edge and they play very cautious. Like, they're very cautious in the late game. And I think that their positioning is very dominant. They apply a lot of pressure on like 3, 4, maybe 5 teams we saw in that first game on Erangel yesterday. And I think that YMCA, just for their late game, is going to be my team to look out for Phase 3.
For me, it's going to be 3D Max. 3D Max, a team that haven't had the hugely promising start that I know that they can pull out, but they've shown trinkles throughout the previous phase as well, where they just put in these absolutely amazing performances. Even in the Contender Promo games that I casted, they just pulled out some of the fantastic performances, and they do have a new addition to the roster, which is Furex from previous Seagorg. So there's that extra variable where it might take them a couple of days, a couple of games for them to really kind of warm up and to start really kind of gelling together. And of course, they've done a lot of prep, a lot of scrims leading up to the phase, but it's not the same as actually competing in the phase and that kind of mental pressure. So when you can perform as a team, and after a bit of time, hopefully it'll show on these games.
And 3D Max had a really good Erangel game, actually. So I think it was game 2 where they did an absolutely extraordinary finish, actually, towards shooting range.
Exactly.
Just a little bit too many teams. Here it is. Game number 1 of day 2 is going to be starting off a very 1,000 plane. We had a really big, also, military island finish yesterday. If you missed that, definitely go check out the VOD. That was absolutely mental.
It wasn't just an island finish. It was like a southwest.
Island,
it was like coastal. Actually, what was it? 3 to 4 games were all coastal finishes, I think?
Yeah, it was like all the 3 first games, except Sandhog, because it's... Yeah, that was actually the
most central, especially when it's the smallest map. But either way. So we do see that these teams are looking to drop straight away. Of course, George Paul is going to be a really easy part of map to access from this playing trajectory. As usual, we see YMCA looking to drop towards Primorsk. LXG hold on to Pachinki once again. And then, of course, we're going to see the likes of HeartShift and Last Crew look to head towards between Rozhok and Yasnai.
I'm seeing something really interesting. Yesterday, uncontested was actually Katana going for military base. This time, DOS Pilot, they're coming around there, which they might have seen the VODs from yesterday, did a little bit of research, there's not many teams dropping in military base. Maybe we can try and take it away from Katana that struggled a little bit in the early stage, but actually going to start off with a fight of Stella. There's this one member of FBI. Open up! Going to be shut down, first kill of the game, going over to Stella. Another Coast game. What is this?
Oh my lord, the PUBG gods are just adding so much spiciness to these games. I absolutely love it. Like, it's so far on the East Coast, Max, that we can't even see the half of the circle or a quarter of the circle. It's absolutely crazy. Love it. A lot of these teams will look to shift towards Milta. Power, of course, the likes of Tornado Energy and InsideGames already have Milta into the side of Milta. So, of course, the teams, I'd say, when you look at Unite and Unity, they're going to look to actually possibly get a boat across the coastline.
That would make the most sense because right now you do have Tornado Energy to kind of gatekeep him. You have like what? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams right now in the zone. So rotations can happen early because there's not a lot of like area to work with, unfortunately. You said like, what is that? Maybe 70? 70%?
It's a good
70% water, which is like real. I don't think we had one normal Erangel game so far.
No,
they've always been out there.
Pretty much. So now we do see Katana and DOS Pilots. You talk about DOS Pilots landing in military island.
Split.
One of the things that I noticed about DOS Pilots is that they did lose players early on in the game, which heavily affected their overall potential of getting a high-end finish, not just from a placement point of view, but even a kill point of view, because when you lose 1 or 2 members early on, you don't have that level of backup, so you can't be as aggressive as you'd like to be. So DOS Pilots, if they can just stick together for a little bit longer in the game as a full squad, there's a higher chance they're going to add to their kill feed and to the placement points later on in the game.
Definitely DOS Pilot, they need to try and ramp up those numbers. They are in last position so far in the standings, so they have to try and have good performances today on day 2. But as I said, Katana and DOS Pilot right now, they're a little bit split. They were doing a 3-3 engage, with one member a little bit taken out on the edges. If they can try and converge back a little bit together, that'd be great. But apparently DOS Pilot, like, okay, this is Katana on Military Island. We don't want to mess with this team, especially in the early game stage. We saw way too many teams die early, unfortunately, in the past. But as I say that, look at those shots from Maxizor with that SLR. Instantly going to flush out POLLADERUC. That's going to be put DOS Pilot down to Tress Pilot.
Ah, like what you did there. Nice pun. Undos chase. As that's Maxizor. We saw him yesterday. I believe it was in the second game of Erangel, where he went from behind and took down 2 squads, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that was second game.
I think it was the second game of Erangel, and he was on his own at that point as well. He's the final member of Katana, and he's starting off game 1 of day 2, doing something as aggressive and just securing those frags, getting those knockdowns. So either way, doing great work now for his side. As you do see Unity, they have Nova all to themselves, and as I said, they have kind of easy access to the main island, which I'd recommend getting those boats and actually even not going to Milta, but actually shifting well outside the coast and head towards Lipovka. If they want to do it, they would want to actually do it relatively soon enough, because you're going to see these teams that landed and went up north, head down south towards the Lipovka and the compounds around that.
LXG, be careful. You have a few members of Quick Math not too far away in the distance. I do think that they're not really going to try and pick the fight. The reason why, they're all in one car, and you can't shoot back when you're in one car on your own. So the best thing would be just to split it off, go for a different compound. And Quick Math is actually aiming for, but Quick Math is actually in front. You can't see it right now on your screen, but they're actually in front of the members of LXG, as Tornado Energy also going to try and rotate towards InsideGames. InsideGames, they already called this location as their home base. So Tornado are going to have to be a little bit cautious. They do not get to a compound. They do come out of the cars like with a little bit of a heel working for themselves. But because InsideGames are so split, it's going to be, like in terms of numbers, it's going to go over to Tornado Energy because they're just completely spread over from Milta over to Milta Powers.
Especially when the fact that, quite obviously, every team is going to look to head into the circle and head towards that coastal line. So it's going to be important that in the next couple of minutes that they band together as that 4-man squad and keep hold of the area that they want to hold on to, which is right now pretty much Milta Power.
HeartShift, also another team rotating. They do have last crew not too far. 3D Max also, so you might have a few early game clashes. You're not too sure, but they are trying to get. I think Lipovka, as you said earlier, I think that maybe trying to get to that location. It seems very interesting to call home, unless you have a really unfortunate rotation towards Military Island, which could happen. It happened on day 1 in the first game. If you had the left side of the island game like day 1, right side on day 2, that's what you're looking for. But yeah, so I can see that now InsideGames, they're trying to slowly regroup, still doing a 2-2 split instead of a 1-1-1-1 split. So it's at least a little bit better. But here it is. You said that earlier. You called it rotation now from Novo for Unity with the boat.
But they want to be careful not to go right too close to the coast. There's a high chance that none of these teams are going to be looking at the water, but all it takes is one person to be that kind of scout, that angle, that perspective scout, and it could inform the rest of the team. But seniks from InsideGames, looking to get the work done. Seems like gotten out of the car. Ensalonzo does get taken out by seniks.
Not looking too good, unfortunately. He did actually drop out of the car. It's not even the bullets that got him. He dropped out of the car, got knocked, and got flushed.
Yeah,
that's a little bit unfortunate. Maybe a misclick or something happened there, but do you want to run out of the car when it's going full speed? Circle going to be closing up about 50% done right now. Katana still, there's no need to really rotate early because there's still a big portion of Military Island in the circle, but DOS Pilot, they did rotate very efficiently towards the other circle and actually to the eastern bridge. I can try and gatekeep Katana there if they want to, but Katana can also go for the safe rotation, maybe a little bit like Unity with the boats. But here it is, as I said, last crew, 3D Max. They were rotating at the same times towards, close to each other with the likes of also HeartShift. But they're so far away, I do not expect this fight to go any further than this. Just going to try and get away from prison.
LXG holding on to kind of just around outside Milta to the south of it, holding on to the coastline. They have the likes of Tornado Energy quite close by to them, as well as, of course, Unity, who did go onto the coastline. In my opinion, a little bit sooner than they kind of should have. Depends on what kind of peaks and areas they do have around that coastline to protect themselves. But they could find themselves being put under a little bit of pressure on the open if they're not too careful. All the while, YMCA taking shots onto one member of 4 angry kids.
Yeah, but he's so far away, especially the drop on the mini there. He's not going to be in too much of a hassle, so he can just peel back. Angry kids always say it. They love playing split. They did that on Sunhawk, didn't work out at all. Yep. Erangel, way bigger map, definitely can fit your playstyle a little bit more. So if you want to try and play split, I think that's when 4 angry kids can actually try and pull it off. YMCA, they've got a pretty good point of pressure, though.
As you do see Milky Way moving down south just past Lipovka, there is a decent chunky area that is open for all these teams around shelter and prison. And I'm kind of surprised that one of these teams haven't occupied shelter, because it's underground, it's relatively safe, and it's kind of center circle. Interesting.
Where's it going to be shifting out? Oh, my God.
Actually, no. Yeah. Okay.
But I was about to say, the reason why I don't see a lot of teams towards shelter and prison is that if you do have a shift similar to this one, your rotation is going to be way more complicated.
I'm done.
So, what are these? Imagine it rotates right on top of Novo after.
But what's hilarious is that even though it has shifted away from the water towards mainland, it's also shifted so heavily still down kind of south that I actually think the water is about 70% of the landmass right now, so it's just 70% of the water. So like, there's so little land compared to any other normal circle that we're going to see team fights early on. As Juicy with the grenade takes down Noki.
Big Kobe right there, going to try and flush out the kill with the second grenade if he can on top of Noki. Nobody from 3D Max around the corner. They're actually in another compound a little bit split away, so goodbye to Noki getting flushed out by actually LXG. They stole that kill.
They did.
Nice.
They did.
But quick math, I think they're in the open. They might want to try and find a little bit of a better position to big fights because you have a lot of teams right around them. Scary position to be in. Hearts are actually going to be losing another member. That's going to be Mike. Taken out of the picture this early on.
Yeah, Quizzy, who was a top fragger from Phase 2 Group A of Contenders, so he's looking to do something similar, helping his cause right now, looking to help his Unity team right now, all the while Milky Way and HeartShift coming close together. Let's see who's going to come down, and as well as InsideGames joining in on the fun.
Milky Way, they're going to try and get into this compound taken over by InsideGames. They got finally back together, but they're still doing only a 2-2 split, as I said earlier, so they didn't get as a full-man squad. So that's going to be a little bit hard to play against the full forces of Milky Way. And so if you remember Hearts actually Kowo going to be getting a nice knock on top of Zoom. Can he close it up? I'm not too sure, but I think Zoom should be safe. They do have a smoke. Can try and res it back up. Mans is getting pretty close to him, but still, Kowo has such a good angle. Here it is going to transfer on through, but unfortunately the card does give a little bit more cover over to iZoom. Doesn't have the info whatsoever, so Kowo definitely a really bad spot. Quizzy, sorry. I was going to say Kiwi. But he's also just hiding in the corners there. And he should be fine. But Milky Way, yeah, I think this is a little bit of a bad spot. And they see Zoom is really low.
Just leave iZoom to go down. And you also have quick math. So Milky Way are in a tough situation.
Oh, no.
Mans gets knocked down by Nihanas from HeartShift. As the kill is going to be secured by two members of HeartShift there right now onto Milky Way as Offstring on his own trying to get away in that UAS.
Those headshots are dirty. Phase 2 just about to close up. 50 seconds remaining. Going to have to try and get those compounds under control. Like the main compounds that you have on towards Milta and between Milta and Milta Power are just big compounds that only one or two teams can actually control. Quick math, they're finally together. Milky Way Offstring just going to be alone in the open, but he's just going to try and snake it through, I believe.
I do think Diggory are a little bit they have compounds, but they're kind of in there individually, and that third member of Quick Math are a little bit further away, but all the while Quizzy's got back in that car after throwing a nade, pushing Kowo back, leaving Snoopy kind of on his own.
They switched position.
It's like, hey, I'm sorry, dude. You know, I'm out of here. You know, I got out there on my own. But look at this. We do see Katana finally making their way through into mainland. They're going to go down by the south coastal line. What is this next circle going to do to us? Is it going to shift up north? No, once again shifts down south. Again, about 55% of that circle is water. But of course, Milta is still very heavily occupied, and they do say you can fit about two teams easily in Milton.
Oh, he's going to try and get a little spray on top of Belk. Doesn't quite find it on inside game. Here it is though. Orange is looking for the... What is it? This turned into derby action. Unity going to try and chase down inside games. They saw that huge shift. They're like, okay, we've got to take a decision now.
Look
and it's just a run for the coastline.
Odstrelovac just decides to kind of pull a stunt move right there, as he is known as Odstrelovac. He does manage to survive for it now, taking on the ramps, the hills, the peaks, as he does look to join the rest of his team.
Once again, Milky Way, Offstring. They are only one member remaining on their side.
Yep.
He's going to try and snake it. After it was a coastline game, to snake it becomes a little bit more careful also because you have so many roads in this location. Rotations are going to be made especially really complicated if you do not have any vehicles to back that up.
Exactly. We did quickly see that Quick Math kind of seemed to maybe, so to speak, listen to me. They've all joined in that one compound. Really good choice by them as a 3-man strong team. It does leave open that compound to be taken over by another team. It was Rewap, but right now, Last Crew are shooting up onto Unity right now. Mook, they have them a little bit pinched, Maxman.
Got one headshot on top of Rin. Was that Mini? Can actually apply a lot of pressure at that point. A few smokes now actually early on. This is a little bit scary. It is Snoopy going to be knocked away. Will he get flushed though? That is a question. I do think that he will not get res back up. Here it is. Another headshot coming on through from Offstring. Hey, despite being the last member of Milky Way, still getting those kills. That's what we're looking for. That's why we fought from Angry Kids and so Katana, and that's why they had a pretty decent run so far. But though, Last Crew, they're very split on this coastline, and they're facing against Unity full force. I'm a little bit scared for them, to be honest.
It's definitely a little bit scary.
Put it in, Unity. Don't go straight forward there. But Quizzy actually in the back applying a lot of pressure and actually doing cover shots. I think that's a really smart rotation for them. Quizzy might die in the process, but if he saves his team, that's what we're looking for.
Now we do see 3D Max and 4 Angry Kids coming together. The nade from Solar took down Havokki as they are going to try and get the better of it. Nixtys is the only one in that compound. He's going to go down as 3D Max hold on to it. RonnieKray and Northeast in the distance. They're going to be slightly pinched by Stellar if they're not too careful, as Nixtys will lose his life finally. Furax, a former Seagorg member, now on 3D Max, securing a frag.
Things are starting to slow down. We still got 16 teams in this circle with
49 players. 49 players.
Oh my god, I did not expect this first game to go down like this again, just like in day one. But a few compounds actually going over to Quick Math, Rewap, 3D Max. They're doing pretty well, and they're playing on all the teams that rotated a little bit too late in the early stage, so they're controlling the pace of the entire game. But look, I can see Katana, they're so good in their positioning, but they're hard out.
Odstrelovac.
Yeah, Odstrelovac just there snaking it through. Might have not given his position away. I think that HeartSour being very cautious might be there.
HeartShift. We have to start whispering, because we can't make too much noise. Odstrelovac, we can't alert HeartShift to where he is. What's he gonna do? What's gonna happen? All the while, Zampeek is looking to take on shots onto Stellar in the distance, as well as LXG. Stellar finally find themselves in a position where they are getting really shut up on this area of the map. No, they do get eliminated. Yep, going out in 16th place as we are down to 15 teams, 46 players. Last Crew hold on to that coastline, peeking their way through, trying to be protected. All the while, Unity are very close by to them. They have the deeps, the dips and trots of that little bit of a hill area. I actually like where Unity stand right now.
Now, be careful, though. Offstring from Milky Way did get scouted out in the distance, and once again, he's the last member, so this might be the end of Milky Way, unfortunately, and it is Milky Way out in 15th position, taken away by Unity. Unity actually kind of dominating these, despite being a team that's rotating a lot. They're doing really well with what's given to them.
We didn't get much of a chance to actually talk about this phase 4 circle because action is starting to kick off so early on. It did shift up kind of northward, so it's out just outside of Milta, and it is the open land area. That road is creating that kind of, that kind of north and south divide right now, as the teams are now trying to find a good position where they're protected without being too much in the open, and they're still able to find angles and shots onto their opponents, because as we talk about, kill points are so important in these games that you don't want to be too safe. You don't want to be too patient, otherwise you could still find yourself going out in 9th place with maybe not even one kill at all.
Katana, they just had the best rotation in the entire game right now. They rotated away from Nova, just a little bit like Unity, but Unity went a little bit more inland, and they did not because they rotated so late, and they just got the entire coastline. They're hoping for next shift for the coastline, but actually DOS, they're really surrounded by a lot of teams, and they might get a little bit of a pickle.
LXG have a great 2-2 split of those compounds just outside Milta, and it's really paying off because X Team has secured that frag onto one member. DOS Pilots, all the while YMCA looking for Compot, their current kill leader in this phase 3 of Contenders, just proning down on top of this building, using the smokes to his advantage.
A few smokes on the building. I think that everyone knows around now that there's someone in that building, so that's for sure. Smoke slowly coming out. YMCA, I think they're maybe not sure if Compo. I don't know if they got the information. He's on his own.
But they should push as a 3-man team. It doesn't matter unless there's 4 people in that building, which I highly doubt at the very top. They should be pushing it as a 3-man team. Secure that frag because with this circle closing in, they have to be very, very careful. As Compo is looking for it, he gets 1 knockdown. But he's down to about 1 health. He does get knocked down. That's going to be a kill secured onto Compo from Tornado. Energy over on the side of YMCA.
Or Rewop. Oh, that's a little bit scary. You got HeartShift in the distance, putting Fine Action in a really bad spot down to now mid HP. Quick math back over to their compound. They fight against Rewop, one of their members. Ewang did not, unfortunately, rotate too late. Rewop, the last addition to the team, actually, of Rewop. So he's going to try and do the moves for his allies. Be careful, though. Last crew, Muck. He does get the information. He's going to go for the spray action. He does get a knock on Quizzy. Can he look for more? Can he flush out 1v3 this team? Here it is. A little bit of a flank on the right. And here it is. Orange does get the upper hand. Shut him down. Was that M4? Doesn't quite get the flush right now. Might create a little bit more time for Rip actually to come in clutch. Where's that smoke? But as I say, that Muck does get flushed away, taking an extra point for Unity.
Yeah, that's good stuff coming out from Unity for now. Although Quizzy does get taken out by Kowo.
Yikes.
All the while, LXG, as I said, they hold on to a good compound. Although 2 members are outside the circle, other 2 members hold on to a building inside the circle. So they are looking pretty damn good because the communication they're going to be able to give over of the angles of who is around there means there's a safer chance they're going to be able to get into that compound as a 4-man squad all by themselves. As we look at this circle, it's shifted up down south, very little water, but it is gone away from the coastline a bit down south.
Yeah, finally a normal kind of shift.
A little bit of a normal shift.
Normal, but it is. LXG, actually, I really like their positioning here. They do a 2-2 positioning on 2 compounds
right.
that are so close together.
Exactly.
It's just 2 angles of fire, and still, if you get a knock on the other compound, you can still assist by just doing a very small smoke road.
Yeah.
So that's just great. There it is. Quick map going to be taken over and stormed by Rewop. Mage Bane going to be the first casualty there. Gets knocked away. Fine, going to look for the engage. Gets actually the flush instantly on top of Pilt of quick math. Diggory going to try and get a little bit more involved. He's so low though. He's right behind the wall. A little bit of spray action was at him. Will it come on through? It does get into the head. Nicely done. Diggory doing the moves once again.
So that pre-fire was so important for Diggory, but what's even more important is if he can try and keep himself alive. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he's the only player left on the side of Quick Math, if I'm not mistaken, and there are 2 members of Rewop right there. But with this circle closing in, all of these players are outside of it, Maxman. So somebody's going to have to make the call. Somebody's going to have to make the push. Is it going to be Quick Math? Is it going to be Rewop? All the while, Ferrari Breach get eliminated in 11th place by Dust of all teams as Diggory down to 7 health. With the circle closing in, the blue zone going to be doing a lot of damage. Is he going to be able to get that first medikit?
No, he's dead. No, he's done. Oh my god, no, he tries and goes for the knock. He does get Mage Bane once again. Does get knocked away. He's actually put down to about 1/5 HP and the circle's coming on through, but unfortunately Ewan just can't save him whatsoever. So he just has to rush for it, my boy. Be fast. Get back into the circle, into a good positioning, but now it's there it is, coming on through.
Oh boy, down to 17, 20 players left, going strong. Actually, 1 member left. 1 member knocked down, should I say. Katana, 4 members left. LXG with 1 knockdown, still have technically a full squad. Actually, no, make that 2 members knocked down. Is Sikoro on the side of YMCA looking to push on through. He's going to have to be a little bit careful. Just what is in the distance as he pushes forward Sikora back just a little bit more.
The rotation from LXG a little bit too late to help out NLXC. That's unfortunately going to be losing him. Same for X Team, going to be taken out. 2 extra points for them, but Dofuse a little bit closer. Grenade. Unfortunately, they're not quite there. 2 grenades coming on through. This not going to connect whatsoever on top of Kajuti and Sikora. Fuse slowly going to try and lurk around the corner on top of Sikora. Here it is. Kajuti gets the info. One of the last members of LXG. Actually, he's going to go for a run for it and turning his back to his enemies. That's not a good call there. You've got to be very cautious, especially when you're crossing the road.
Yeah, but just White got the knockdown onto Sikora. That actually gave Fuse a far better chance of actually moving into a circle, because when you look at Kajuti, he's outside the circle. So is he going to look to get the revive onto Sikora? Because he's only got 7 seconds before this blue zone starts closing in. And this tick damage on phase 6 is so much as the grenades start flying out. All the while, LXG getting shot from behind from, I believe, InsideGames, if I'm not mistaken, Pixelix, or it could be Katana. It could be any one of those 3 teams. Either way, gotta be aware of every single angle, every single perspective, as they do now get into that building as that 2-man team. Katana still going 4-man strong.
Hey, E1, despite having an N21 being the only member on this side, actually doing good work on top of 3D Max, been soloed down, but here it is. Does not get taken out by the blue zone. That's an extra 1 juicy point for 3D Max. And now the circle almost going to be closing up in the next 1 minute and 20 seconds. Going to try and keep that in mind. Katana now, they have to force the offensive. It did shift away from their coastline. They have to try and force these teams back a little bit, making all the rotations that little bit more complicated. But now 3D Max, they're finally going to try and get a little bit more in depth of the fight with LXG. They are pulling off a 3v2 after all, so it should be going their way. Unfortunately, once again, they do not have the information. First shot going to be coming out and actually get turned around. Verax, what was that?
Because that was great pre-fire, but they just didn't connect. There's no point pre-firing if it's not on target. As Solar now down to 36 health. Just why he's able to secure that frag onto Furax. 3D Max find themselves in a position where there's only 2 players left, Solar and Phantom. And they are just inside the circle, holding on to that Wizard Tower. Smoke grenades, smoke start now pushing out. Phantom is inside the Wizard Tower. Solar is outside of it. It gives them a little bit of a chance. I wonder, Fuse, have they used all their grenades in looking to take out YMCA? It seems like they do not have any on their side they're going to be able to throw out in the direction of 3D Max, as we do see them looking to push their way through. All the while, Katana, the only team with a full squad, they have to take advantage of this, Maxman.
InsideGames, they're going to try and use this tree as defense, actually turning it around pretty nice on 3D Max. Only going to have Solo remaining. Just try and pop a grenade there. Trying to create a little bit of a smoke mode road. If he can, Katana can get going to be taken out of the picture. Katana down to now 3 members, despite having one of the easiest early games scenes. Now, Tornado Energy, they have to rotate away because that HeartShift tower is not in the circle anymore. A few shots with the mini will be enough to take him down. Tornado Energy in 5th position, 4 teams remaining.
Oh man, 10 players. That circle shift is shifted up kind of northward. It's outside of the coastline, although when I say outside of the coastline, YMCA, they're finding it on their side. So they actually have a good position. They could actually surprise Katana. 1 member inside the circle, 2 outside, but it's very close because this circle is a lot smaller.
That's why I said I love YMCA in the late game. Their positioning is so good to apply pressure on all the last remaining teams. They're going to try and actually surprise, as you said, Katana. As Katana, I don't think they have an idea. They do have the top of a mountain, though. Like a little hill, not really a mountain, just a small little hill. They can try and really defend from there pretty easily. The high ground is so important for them to get. And they do have good weapons at this range. Like, the mini is great here.
Oh, look at that. But all it will take is a Kobe. Do they have a grenade? No grenades from top. Only a couple of smokes. On his side, as Pixix on the side of InsideGames looking to fire a couple of shots. They need to get into circle. They are going to get into a vehicle. The reason why is because you're able to drive it a little bit forward as that one-man team. Get it into the circle, then get out of it, go behind and be a little bit careful, but you want to make sure you don't go too far forward. Zampeek, what are you doing?
What?
Are you going a little bit too far forward? Talk on the side of Katana. Gets that knocked down. That was a little bit too far forward.
Yeah. Like a scout at this stage, I don't know.
Well, it was just like he was just trying to get it safely in the circle. But if you're not 100% sure where your opponents are, don't put it too far forward, especially when you're on your own and there's no backup from behind. So InsideGames now down to 2 players, Pixix and seniks, 4 teams, 9 players left.
Actually, LXG, they did get forgotten about a little bit there. So LXG might be able to get back in like maybe top 2 or maybe take the chicken dinner away. I think that the team under the most pressure right now is InsideGames. They are 9 in the circle.
Definitely agree.
And because they do not have the high ground, and actually LXG, they're going to try and flank them a little bit on their side. So definitely InsideGames, they're going to have to be very, very cautious of their right side. But also LXG, they're under pressure once again from Katana, which are dictating the entire late game. So
dance, baby, dance.
Down very low HP. InsideGames, they're going to try and do a rush rover. It is Katana maxes all. Does get a nice little buff damage out on top of seniks. Down to 4 HP. Hasbury not looking too good. Grenade coming on through.
Nice.
Katana actually getting 1 knock on through on seniks. Actually flushes him out instantly. Pixel taken out of the picture. InsideGames in 4th position. 3 teams remaining as Katana finally LXG finding a few first shots.
That's it. Katana using their man advantage on their side. They still have 3 members strong, but they took a lot of hit. They took a lot of damage in that push on the InsideGames, but it's all for the greater cause. Get those frags, get those squad wipes, and secure a better position in the overall point standings for this game 1 of day 2 of phase 3 of Contenders. We are down to 3 teams, 7 players left, Max.
LXG, YMCA, Esports, and Katana are going to be trying to aim that. They're all on the opposite sides of the circle. As I said, actually, Kajutsi going to be trying to actually pull off a little bit of the offensive, trying to split away from Sikora a little bit. Sikora just playing the very coastline kind of finish there, trying to maybe be the last survivor of his team. Here it is, a little bit of a SLR action from Sikora. LXG going to be losing one of their first members. He's going to be knocked away. Pretty sure he's not going to get res. That would seem extremely unlikely. Katana also taking a few shots back and forth of YMCA, and I said YMCA, their positioning is so freaking good. Putting 2 members of Katana knocked away, and Katana now left with 1 member.
And I agree with that. I agree with that split at that late stage of the game because you're able to hold better angles, and there's always a chance you're going to potentially like get taken down at some point. So if you can secure a knockdown, that is exactly what is going to work. As YMCA secure, they do take down LXG. This is going to be a 1v1 situation.
No, 1v2 now.
1v2.
Azuring just got res back up. It's going to be pretty close. The smoke slowly, tickety, he's going to be going down. Can he also res back up? Kajuti, he's going to try and get through that little bit of a dip. I think that'll be perfect. I think he does have the time to do so. If he has a smoke, that'll be the perfect time to just slow down the late game.
Yep.
But it's all going to be YMCA, all going to be Katana. And actually, as we say that, we hit the late game. The
very last phase. Yeah, the very last phase. And now it's gone down to a 2v2 situation. Actually, no, Kajuti is actually still knocked down. My humble apologies. So now Azrin and Talk. They're looking to drive forward. They're trying to hold a dip of the hill. The 1 of 2 smoke grenades. No, that's the 2 smoke grenades that he has left being thrown out. He does still have a frag grenade, Max, that could play a huge part, but Secura, he's holding on. Kajuti is holding on in distance. They have a great split. On one hand, Katana are very close together, so they're able to kind of support each other. But on the other hand, YMCA, they are split. Therefore, they actually have better angles, and they can kind of pinch Katana from that point of view.
Careful, Kajuti's on the high ground. They got the high ground and the low ground at the exact same time, and it is YMCA actually. Kajuti's going to be knocked away. That's going to turn into a 1v2. And as I say that, here it is. Winner, chicken dinner to Katana, the beast of the military island. That huge shift that just allowed them to just play safe the entire game. And at the end, when they had to, they inserted itself and they just played it awesomely.
Well, when it got to that kind of late stage, they were the only team that had 4 members up, that full squad. I could say that maybe they didn't play that advantage as much as they could have, but then again, we weren't looking at every single part of that. However, they made it count when it needed to be done. They pinched InsideGames. They held on very strongly to their position. But you got to say, YMCA and LXG pulled in fantastic games because LXG, who were going up against YMCA at one point on the edge of Milta, they kind of held off and they stayed out of trouble, right? And they got a higher placement position finish just purely because they held off and InsideGames took the brunt of that. And then YMCA, which we talked about, their late game rotations, so good.
You understand why I say they got a really good late game? Unfortunately, having that high ground, low ground, was actually so smart from them doing that split at the end. I think it was a little bit unexpected from Katana. Unfortunately,
it didn't work out.
They scouted him out a little bit too fast. They weren't really expecting that. Didn't have time to respond. Got one knock, turned into a 1v2. At that stage, 1v2 in the late game, especially in an open area, you have 2 angles.
Exactly.
One spray is not enough to get 2 kills, and that's why it went over to Katana. But here it is. We're going to go back over to the highlights if you did unfortunately miss out the action. Where's DOS actually, the team that did drop actually towards Katana, but they went away.
They did, and in fairness, Katana followed up by getting 11 kills as well, so that chicken dinner with 11 kills is not a bad thing at all. YMCA, they got second, but it was only 5 kills, so it's something that, it's not the worst points result in the world by all means, but if they had gotten a couple of more kills, of course it would have helped the security of that position. This was what I was talking about. YMCA felt were under so much pressure between LXG inside Milta, but that was quick math. And of course, Rewap.
Unity there, that's when they were trying to fight a little bit on the edge of the circle. They were trying their best. They're very edge kind of circle team, I got to say, especially when we saw that on Miramar yesterday. They loved that edge of the circle. Rewap, they were trying to actually pick a really big fight. That was actually really nicely played, but unfortunately the circle inserted himself a little bit too early in that fight, and that just Rewap had a really unfortunate time, even though Diggory at the end did get taken out.
But he secured that frag on the one member of Rewap. That was, I know it's not much, but it's kind of like, dude, that's an extra point. That's an extra point for your team, and I know it's only day 2, but it could be the 30-second game. It could come down to 1 point between you finishing 9th and 9th, and that could be the difference maker. You take every chance, you take every opportunity you can within each game to help your team.
As when InsideGames, they were a little bit in a pinch between a lot of the teams. They actually got 9 kills that game in Purim because they were fighting constantly.
InsideGames getting 9 kills. What a surprise! I'd say with huge sarcasm.
They were fighting consistently, and they survived until like 4th position, which I personally find is a huge surprise. And it's absolutely awesome because they kept chucking smokes, and when they killed a team, they got their smokes, chucked the smokes again. So that was just awesome by InsideGames.
Plus, we saw in the first 2 games of Erangel yesterday, InsideGames pulled in some fantastic performances. So maybe Miramar is obviously their strongest map, but heading into 2 games of Miramar, you kind of wonder, will they be able to echo the same kind of result in Miramar? They didn't have the best result in Miramar yesterday, so I'm sure they'll want to look to pick up the pieces. But this was the end. Katana getting that chicken dinner. Of course, these are the point standings from this first game of the day. Last Crew getting 0 points.
Last Crew being the last team. They did deserve their name for this first game of day 2. 16th position. Unity, they were also fine a lot. They had a really good position, I think. Unfortunately, I don't think they played it to its full potential, and they got taken out. They got finished up by especially Last Crew, and they lost a few members after Last Crew did lose that fight at the end. But here it is, the tippity top of the mountain. Katana, 10 positioning points, 11 kills, 21 points in one single game. That's huge.
I believe that's our first game of Phase 3 where a team has secured more than 20 points in one game. As far as I know, I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the highest before that was 19 points. But this is the kill leaders from this game 1. Not surprising, mjyoh, 6 kills for his Katana team, followed by Furax, the newest member of 3D Max with 4 kills, and just white of LXG in 3rd place with 3.
I'm not really surprised to see mjyoh. He was always leading the offensive in all of the fights. Maybe a little bit too much at the end. He did get a little bit out of position against InsideGames and LXG, and got taken out at some point. So I think maybe just try and hold himself down a little bit. Just strap down, stay with your team. And then the damage dealers talk from Katana. Like, you're not really surprised because Katana would just... They saw a team that would just snipe them down. They had the mini 14s. They had all the sniping action that they needed. And at that positioning, that was exactly what they were looking for. So I'm not really surprised to see Katana players at the tippity top there for the damage. Yeah,
so really great start to day 2. A little bit, I wouldn't say disappointed, but Last Crew, they were in 15th place at the end of day 1. I know, it's kind of early stage of the group stage, but you gotta, you start as you mean to go on, and they started day 2 with the last place finish in 0 points. They will want to look to pick it up heading into game 2.
Yeah. Last Crew, let's hope they have a better game on Miramar. Miramar going to be your next game. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back in just a few short minutes.